When I spoke at North Park Community Church, I mentioned when doctors and nurses would introduce themselves to me for the first time and tell me that they had read up about me and that I had been through quite the ordeal. This did happen many times that I remember, at each of the 5 hospitals I was a patient at. The thing is that this also happened after I was discharged from the hospital. On May 29th of 2023, after I had been recovering at home since when I was discharged at the end of January, I was scheduled to meet a doctor in London, Ontario about the seizure medication I was prescribed after I had a seizure when my aneurysm burst. I was waiting in a consultation room to meet this doctor when the doctor's assistant walked into the room and introduced themselves by saying, "Hi, Phil. I've read up about you. You've been through quite the ordeal." I was a bit shocked and speechless when I heard this, because I said to my wife the day before that it would be funny if I had heard this again since I heard it when I was a patient at this hospital. Then on June 12th of 2023, I was scheduled to meet with an anesthesiologist in Guelph General Hospital to discuss a procedure I had coming up. I again was waiting in a consultation room in this hospital when the anesthesiologist walked in the room in the hospital and said, "Hi, Phil. I've read up about you. You've been through quite the ordeal." This time I laughed and said to this doctor, "I don't know if you believe in miracles, but this was clearly a miracle." He responded and said, "Well, it clearly wasn't your time to die." He then asked me if I had any neurological issues. I responded and said I had none that I was aware of. While I was doing outpatient cognitive therapy, I was working with a therapist on a system that was designed to exercise my focus while I would be introduced to distraction. I was working with the system on this large touch screen in front of me when I glanced at the therapist standing beside me. She had a puzzled look on her face, so I asked her if everything was okay. Her response to me was, "Yes, but I've never seen anyone progress to this level of the system before." More recently, in March of 2024, I was attending a clinic where I was involved in some therapy with a kinesiologist and a physiotherapist as part of getting ready to return to work. I was in the therapy room when another person in the room, who was also there getting therapy, walked up to me and said, "I overheard the therapist talking about you. They said you are one of those amazing patients." At this point, the therapist whom I was with, who was also likely one of the therapists who was overheard, felt like she needed to defend herself for talking about me and said, "We were just saying how well you are doing and how differently things could have been given everything that had happened." These are a few examples that speak of the miraculous intervention that I experienced, as these people who clearly have experience dealing with all kinds of medical situations are still shocked when they know what happened to me. I've never read what was written, but the more I learn about the ordeal I've been through, I too am amazed, as my recovery has been so dramatic that it is hard for me to realize that these things happened to me. In fact, this miraculous recovery has been a shock to me as well. There are multiple times I too was shocked to hear what happened to me. There was one time I was in the hospital and a doctor came to do some testing with me and said that I was recovering from my stroke very well. I said to this doctor, "Well, that's understandable, as I didn't have a stroke. I had an aneurysm burst." The response to me was, "Yes, you had an aneurysm burst, but you had a stroke too." I was shocked to hear this, as I was progressing so well that I didn't even know this. A similar thing happened when I was being transferred between hospital number 2 and hospital number 3 in an ambulance. The ambulance attendant, who was watching over me, asked me to smile. I responded and said, "Why does everyone keep asking me to smile?" She said it was because I had a stroke and they were checking my facial muscles. I was not aware of many of the things that happened to me, and I too have been shocked by my own recovery.